Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with jazz bassist, composer, and producer Daniel Foose. He is releasing his new 2016 CD of Water and Ghosts on October 7, and he's a very busy cat. Originally from New Orleans, but he was raised in Austin, Texas. His father played the guitar and piano, and he was in and out of the studio, and Daniel was there with him as a child. He would go on to North Texas University to get the good jazz education, and these days he's performing with Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga on tour and has logged some quality time with a lot of heavy jazz cats. So get to know Daniel and dig this interview, my friends.
Hey, thanks for taking a little time out for me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So before we get into Of Water and Ghosts coming out on October 7, I want to just get kind of an idea of what's going on with you as far as activity, touring, anything that's going on with you.
Well, that CD release for that show is going to be November 22nd, Tuesday. But outside of that, I've been doing some sideman work, touring around with a few different projects. Mainly, of late, the highest profile one I've been doing is with Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett. Been doing a few gigs with them over the past year or so. Mostly private events, fundraisers, and that kind of stuff. Also touring around doing some on the swing dance circuit with a band called Professor Cunningham, led by a great saxophonist Adrian Cunningham. Also, I co-lead a band called the Gold Magnolias, which is a funk soul band that I play electric bass in that. And we tour usually about twice a year through the U.S. and play pretty actively in New York.
It's interesting. I've always thought the dynamic of Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett has been pretty interesting, not only on paper but in reality. They do really well together. What's it like to be around that with such an age difference? They come from two completely different worlds. How does that feel to be up there gigging with them?
It's interesting because they come from very different generations, but also they kind of have some similar cultural backgrounds in their Italian heritage, which they both are very hold on to very proudly. And also she's from New Jersey, and he grew up in Queens, so there's definitely a connection there. She's very deferential and respectful to him, of course, and he's just very hip to be around, and likewise with her, just great to work with, and they have just a really nice dynamic between them too.
Very cool. So let's go ahead and get into Of Water and Ghosts. I've listened to the album. It's a great album. Talk to me a little bit about kind of the motivating forces that went into this, and kind of take me into the studio. How did everything go?
This has been a very personal project to me. This is my debut record. Composing the music, I went down to my family's land down in Mississippi for about a month and was able to just go to some specific places with my bass, compose a lot of the material for the album that way. So in that way, I was really hoping to get a sense of place and kind of hopefully imbue the music with a feeling of the place that I was writing about. In terms of the studio, I was really fortunate to have a cast of amazing musicians helping me, and a great string quartet with Maria Eam and Tomoko Omura and Alison Clare and Jennifer DeVore, and Sebastian Noel on guitar and Keita Ogawa on percussion. And I just couldn't have been more happy with all of their effort and love that they really put into it. It was amazing. We were actually able to track everything in one day. And one person had a flat tire, and we had a no-show viola player who will remain nameless, but it all came together, and I was just really, really happy to have such a great group of musicians.
Well, and as you touched on a little bit about your past, you were born in New Orleans and raised in Austin, and I know your father played the guitar and the piano and was a scholar in New Orleans. What was it like to grow up with him, being in music, and just how did it infuse you to not only want to get into music, but jazz specifically? I
was super, super lucky to be born in New Orleans, didn't live there very long, but raised in Austin, where the music scene was just so fertile, and still is. It's such a great music town. Aside from being a scholar of New Orleans music and a great songwriter himself, my dad also in Austin was a producer of a lot of blues artists. He would often just let me come hang out at the studio while he'd be producing different artists, and I would just kind of be able to hang back and see this process going on and getting to go hang backstage with a lot of his buddies who were local musicians, and it was always just presented as this really fun thing to do. It was never really forced on me, and I was just given a lot of opportunities. The music education system in Austin and in Texas in general is really strong in the public schools. I had a lot of great music educators in junior high and in high school that really helped me along the way. They had a great jazz band in Keeling Junior High led by Mark Gergel that I attended. And I mean, we even had Wynton Marsalis came and did a clinic, for my 7th grade, jazz band. So there was a lot of great culture coming through Austin at that time and a lot of great jazz happening in Austin as well.
At 12, you start out on the trombone and the bass. Why did the bass win out for you?
I don't know. I think I just started working more with the bass in high school, just professionally. I ended up started gigging out a lot more on the bass. Still pick up the trombone every once in a while, but it's definitely not a fun thing to hear. Not for public consumption, I should say. But I don't know. I just I fell in love with the bass. And my best friend growing up was a guitar player, and so I kind of always wanted to jam with him, and that seemed like a natural fit. So.
Cool, man. So let's stay in the realm of childhood, so to speak, or your early formative years. And I want to know, was there a real seminal jazz album that you listened to that was like, wow, this is amazing?
I remember hearing a lot of the classic records, but I remember one record in particular that I got turned on to. I remember being in a music camp at the University of Texas, and as another student hit me to this, it was a Dave Holland record called One's All. Which is a solo bass record. And I just remember listening to that record and just being in awe someone could do that on the instrument. I never heard anything like that. So I feel like that opened a door for me, just seeing what was possible on the instrument and seeing how expressive it could be just all by itself, and what a master he is. And of course, just exploring more his music. And then that led me back to his influences and getting really into Coltrane in high school, like I think a lot of people do, and into all the bop guys. But I remember that record in particular really was like a door into a whole world.
So was it always music for you? I know you grew up around it with your dad, but was it always kind of a foregone conclusion that you were getting into it, or did you have some kind of other ideas of how your life would turn out?
I don't know. It was always just the funnest thing to do. I was really into science and math in high school, but high school also had a really good band program. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, or if not the same. So I just kind of gravitated to the thing that was the most fun, which was getting to play with my friends and getting to perform for people, and that was just always such a blast and continues to be. So yeah, that's why I chose it as a career. You
had mentioned, high school at one point and learning and Dave Holland, and Art Langston in high school was really big with you learning the acoustic bass. And then you went on to get involved with the Austin scene. How big was that? How big was his teachings for you in your life?
Oh, it was really great. He was, my dad, I feel very privileged because since my dad was a producer, he knew every musician in town. He knew all the best teachers, so he really was able to kind of find the best cats to come and for me to hang out with, and it was really cool. But Art was really a great teacher. He was a great electric bass player and a great acoustic bass player, and he really he's really humorous and has a really fun spirit about music. So it was never very dogmatic or too serious. It was always presented as like, well, here, learn some tunes. What tunes do you want to learn? Okay, let's check those out. It was very self-directed, but it got a great perspective because he was such a great professional in the arena and really gave me a lot of insight into the nuts and bolts of being a professional bassist.
Of course, your education moves on to the great North Texas University. What did you learn there in a formal environment that helped you so much to strive in the current music world?
Countless things. I mean, I spent a lot of time there because I did my undergrad and master's there and got to study with the great Lynn Seaton, so I got to spend a lot of time with him. I had taken a few formal bass lessons, but really never studied it on a real technical level until I got to college, and that was just, technique-wise, Jeff Braditich there is one of the most amazing bass professors in the world for the classical side, and just getting to be around him and getting to really like outside of just, of course, the things that all you get as a student in the college, I feel like especially the things that I really benefited from was getting to play with the professors quite a bit. in both formal and just informal environments. They were very nice to me and very like welcoming to me and able to and willing to play with me, I feel like. So that was really cool, to just being able to relate to the faculty members on the bandstand in a way that was a little more like a musical peer than a student after a while. Learning so much especially from Ed Soph, the drum professor there, and Stephen Carlson, who was the piano professor there at the time, and Dan Hurley. Yeah, just countless lessons about writing and arranging, and I feel like especially North Texas is really near Dallas and Fort Worth, so you get a lot of access to just working early on as a professional rhythm section player. Most of the freshmen and sophomore, bass players and drummers are working at least a couple nights a week with different singers and instrumentalists around town doing club dates. So it's a real fertile learning environment, both academically and just real world level too.
Well, and obviously everything has gone pretty well. You've shared the stage with Jimmy Cobb, Terry Lynn Carrington, Benny Golson, Michael Weiss. There's been so many people that you've shared the stage with. What has it been like to be around veterans? And what do you learn as you kind of grow into your own sound in jazz?
I don't know. I hope I'm growing into my own sound. I feel like it's just a constant process of learning and trying to figure it out. But being around the veterans it's amazing to see the humility that a lot of them still eschew, and the childlike curiosity that a lot of them have. I would say that being around Tony Bennett, especially, like he just had his 90th birthday, but he's still got this spark. And I think that's the thing that when you see all these guys who are still doing it, at 85, 90 years old, and I think it has to be that curiosity and that humility that just kind of keeps them learning and keeps them striving, despite their legendary status and greatness. People, we could just say, oh, y'all should just you could just relax, where you're at, but they continue to push. You see these videos of Sonny Rollins talking about him still practicing and trying to be a better musician. So that's I guess the thing that those older legends all have in common is just that still sense of being a student, sense of still pushing.
Yeah, and I think that's a part of the reason why they're so good, is because they're always humble about it. They're always striving, for sure.
Yeah.
So you make the move to New York City in 2008. Was that a big shock for you to go to New York, or was it kind of a logical geographical leap for you?
I mean, I'd always wanted to do it. I kind of had my eyes set on it, but it was definitely a culture shock for sure. And I've been here 8 years now and still getting used to it in some ways, I feel like. But yeah, it definitely takes a few years to get your feet wet, I feel. Well, for me at least. Like some people hit the ground running, but you definitely, first year or so, you're still don't have a lot of gigs. You're really just trying to meet as many people as possible and network and scrape together whatever you can to try to make it work. But it's kind of cool. I think it's a hard but fun, really fun process. And I mean, New York is just such a playground for musicians. It's just the funnest place to be.
So the first time that you really started, playing on larger platforms and with bigger musicians and bigger venues, were you kind of bespeckled by it, or was it just something that, you've been around music for so long in studios, was it just kind of another place, or did you get kind of wrapped up in that notion of where you were?
I mean, there's definitely the Lady Gaga thing is a pretty recent thing for me in the past maybe year or so, and that definitely feels pretty surreal at times. Just trying to get more at ease with those kind of environments. But really, what I've come away with it is it's like, whether you're playing on a big stage for a whole lot of people, or you're playing in a club and there's nobody there, or whatever the situation is, it's just you and the instrument and the musicians you're playing with. So it's really, it really is just the same thing. All the outside stuff changes, but really, if you could kind of remind yourself that, oh yeah, we're just here playing music, then kind of keeps it all on a certain level of doability.
Yeah. What I'm interested in too is, you've had albums as a solo cat. You're obviously collaborating with Tony and Lady Gaga. And then you have these bigger outfits like the Brian Newman Quintet, the Brooklyn Jazz Orchestra. How do you keep all that straight? How does that make you grow as a musician to be in kind of smaller settings and bigger settings? How does that work in the entire jazz soup of your mind?
It's great. I mean, and I think, well, for one thing, that Brian Newman is Lady Gaga's music director for her jazz show. So we're tied in with that particular group. A lot of bass players, especially, and drummers and piano players, rhythm section players, especially in New York, can all attest to the fact that you end up doing a lot of different kinds of gigs. I love it. I think it's like musical circuit training. I definitely enjoy sometimes being in situations that are outside of my comfort zone. I always am able to learn a lot. And especially in New York, there's so many different types of situations that you end up in, especially, as a bass player, you'll be playing with a cabaret artist, and you could be filling in for a rock gig, and then, going and doing a classical soundtrack or something, and then a straight ahead jazz hit later that night. It's great. I think it all feeds each other. You're able to carry different aspects of one to the next, and it builds you up as a stronger musician.
Let me ask you this. Who are your jazz heroes? I mean, you've mentioned some folks here and there, but who would you consider like your bona fide jazz heroes?
Well, definitely, like I mentioned, Dave Holland, but Ray Brown is definitely my number one bass guy. In terms of just overall music, Coltrane is probably my number one cat, of course, like so many. But yeah, I think mainly a lot of those cats are really my main influence. Ray Brown in particular, such a strong presence on the bass, and just everything he touches swings so hard. I feel like I always go back to him.
Well, let's whittle the list down a little bit here. If you could go back in time, if you could get into that jazz DeLorean and see a show, who are you going to see and where are you going to go? And what year?
I would go back and see Louis Armstrong and his Hot Five down in New Orleans, late 20s, etc. Yeah, because I think that would be really cool to hear that sound live, because it gets so much on the records, more, just hits that tone. So I can't imagine what that tone must have sounded like, up close and personal.
So let me ask you a generic, kind of general question. Why do you love jazz?
It's really fun. I don't know. It's just a lot of fun to play. It's one of those things I guess it's kind of like learning a language, where the more you learn, the more gratifying the conversation can be, and the more enriching the literature can get. So it's really a process that seems to get, the more comfortable I am on the instrument and just with jazz language, it seems like it gets more fun and more fun. So I don't know, it's just especially when you're working with friends, it's like you have it in the green room conversation. I was just playing last night with Brian Newman Quintet, and we were at the Iridium, and we're just such a great group of guys, and we're just hanging out backstage, just talking like musicians do, and then we just go up on the stage, and it's just like it's really just a continuation. It's just like, oh yeah, now we're just using different words, just using our instruments, but it's really that same kind of humor, still able to kind of just carry on that same conversation. It's really, I think jazz affords you that kind of interplay that's really fun.
Yeah, very cool. I'm always interested too with the health of jazz in America in 2016, and every time I hear about New York, it sounds like it's just as good as it always has been. So my question is this: how healthy is jazz?
I think jazz is healthy. I'm sure it depends on who you ask, of course, and everyone always bemoans the good old days, I feel like, regardless of their generational place. But it's changing. But I think it's healthy to see things like John Baptiste on the Colbert Show, and seeing a lot of kind of crossover stuff where instrumental music is being presented in a really cool way by musicians that can really play. So I think that to me is a good sign. I think everything's kind of cyclical. I feel like maybe it's kind of reached a point where people are maybe a little bit tired of some of the machine-driven music, and they want to hit a little more organic stuff now. Maybe that's kind of coming into fashion a bit. I think the swing dance thing is coming. There's a new resurgence of that. It's kind of helped fuel this whole trad scene in New York. But I feel like the new music scene in New York is really strong. There's still a great audience here, and a lot of great patrons of jazz, and a lot of great clubs, and a lot of new clubs opening too. I think it's a good time.
So speaking of audiences, what has been one of the best things that a fan has ever said to you about your music?
I'm just really happy with really any kind of reaction. Sometimes people, I think the coolest thing is when someone comes up and just says thank you, but you can see there's a certain look in their eye where they really feel gratified, like you could tell that they understood, they got what you were trying to communicate. And it's not even I guess it's not even a thing I could put into words, but there's a few times in my life, I could say maybe half a dozen, I've had that happen where someone comes up to me very genuinely, thank you, with this look in their face where I was like, okay, we had some kind of connection there while the music was going on.
Everybody has a version of who you are, your family, your friends, your business associates. But when you wake up and face the world, who do you think you are?
Whoa. Who do I think I am when I wake up? I feel like I'm a very fortunate person who's really lucky to get to play in this sandbox every day. I feel really fortunate in every way about all of the things that have been so lucky to happen to me in my life and my career. You know, it makes me want to work harder and keep trying to pursue, more of my own artistic vision too, and keep writing more.
Man, I like that. I like the sandbox. That's awesome. Hey, Daniel, thank you for taking some time out today, talking to me about your album and your life of music. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, I sure appreciate it, Joe. Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, New Orleans, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Daniel for his time, his music, and all the stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store or visit the Neon Jazz YouTube channel. And you can always get everything Neon Jazz at the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.